Welcome back to The Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here today because, wow, we are diving into a truly fascinating metabolic puzzle. Look, if you or anyone you know really has ever dealt with joint pain, you know exactly how incredibly frustrating it can be, right? Historically, gout was notoriously dubbed the disease of kings. You know the image. You're picturing King Henry VIII clutching his giant swollen foot, blaming it on endless feasts of rich meats and wine. But is that actually accurate? Well, today we're breaking down a really captivating presentation from Metabolic Dr. K. He offers this modern, deep dive into fixing gout naturally, and it's all about truly understanding our metabolism. We're going to completely decode the science of high uric acid and look really closely at a very specific nutritional intervention.
So, what really causes gout? I mean, it sounds like a totally simple question with an age-old answer, right? For decades, literally decades, people have just been told to avoid meat. But do we truly know the root cause of this agonizing joint pain? Today, we're going to introduce the real villain of our story. And spoiler alert, it might actually not be what you've always been told. It all comes down to a microscopic metabolic process that is literally happening inside you right now.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll hit the origins of uric acid. Second, uric acid's bodily role. Third, gout versus pseudo-gout. Fourth, foods to strictly avoid. And finally, step 5, the keto carnivore solution. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Origins of uric acid and where it actually comes from.
Okay, let's play medical translator for a quick second. Hyperuricemia. Yeah, it sounds super intimidating, but let's just break it down. Hyper basically means high or excessive. Uric refers to uric acid. And emia, well, that simply means present in the blood. So hyperuricemia is just the medical condition characterized by abnormally high levels of uric acid circulating around in your bloodstream. Understanding this clinical term is absolutely crucial because this elevated state is the core biological problem. It literally sets the stage for everything else we're going to discuss today.
According to Metabolic Dr. K's breakdown, we really have to look closely at our body's internal chemistry laboratory. Now, uric acid is created as a totally natural byproduct when our bodies break down chemicals called purines. But here is the massive paradigm shift. The most aggressive drivers of this whole process aren't necessarily what you think they are. It's actually heavily tied to glucose metabolism and, even more severely, fructose metabolism. When your liver is basically forced to process high amounts of fructose, it rapidly depletes its cellular energy, specifically its ATP. It is exactly like an engine redlining. It just burns out so quickly. And the exhaust pipe from that overworked engine just pumps out these massive, thick clouds of uric acid.
Moving right along to Section 2, uric acid's bodily role, specifically its antioxidant function.
So you might be wondering, does uric acid actually serve a purpose, or is it just, metabolic garbage that our body is desperately trying to throw away? Well, the source material notes something super interesting. At normal, healthy levels, uric acid actually isn't the bad guy at all. In fact, in normal amounts, it provides a significant portion of the antioxidant capacity in our blood. It circulates around and literally helps protect your blood vessels from damage. The problem really only arises when the bucket overflows. When we push our metabolism way too hard and produce too much, or say our kidneys just can't excrete it fast enough, we cross that threshold right into hyperuricemia. And that is when this normally helpful compound turns into a really major problem.
All right, Section 3, gout versus pseudo-gout. Similar pain, but a completely different cause. It's so vital we separate true gout from what doctors actually call pseudo-gout, based on Dr. K's medical definitions. So true gout is the direct result of hyperuricemia. That excess uric acid literally crystallizes right inside the joint, very often the big toe, and it forms these sharp, needle-like shards that cause just intense immune reactions and pain. Ouch, right? Now, pseudo-gout, on the other hand, causes incredibly similar painful joint symptoms, but, and this is a big but, it is triggered by an entirely different underlying cause. It's actually driven by rhomboid-shaped calcium pyrophosphate crystals. It's just a brilliant reminder that just because the pain feels exactly the same, it definitely doesn't mean the metabolic driver is the same. Getting the right diagnosis, that's always step 1. Which brings us to Section 4, foods to strictly avoid. We're talking dietary triggers.
Okay, so when it comes to the strict dietary don'ts that directly exacerbate hyperuricemia, high fructose foods are absolutely the primary offenders. Remember that glucose and fructose metabolism connection we established a few minutes ago? Well, this is exactly where it hits your plate. Think sugary sodas, sweetened fruit juices, and all those processed foods just packed with high fructose corn syrup.
Alongside all of that, excess glucose sources, like those heavy refined carbohydrates we all know about, well, they spike your insulin and actually impair your kidney's ability to clear out that uric acid. By feeding your body these specific sugars, you are essentially slamming your foot on the gas pedal for uric acid production while simultaneously, completely cutting the brakes on your body's ability to excrete it.
And finally, Section 5, the keto carnivore solution, the natural gout protocol.
So if sugar and fructose are the things driving all this dysfunction, how in the world do we fix it naturally? Well, the intervention detailed by Dr. K is the keto carnivore diet. This is his highly specific, natural protocol for managing gout. And the strategy here is to completely remove the carbohydrates, the glucose, and the fructose that are driving that excessive uric acid production. And instead, you fuel the body entirely on animal proteins and fats. It's a truly fascinating approach that directly targets those exact metabolic pathways we've been unpacking today.
Now, this protocol literally flips traditional advice completely on its head. I mean, instead of the usual, just avoid meat recommendations, Dr. K's approach identifies glucose and fructose-heavy foods as the absolute triggers you must strictly avoid. Why? Because they rapidly ramp up that uric acid synthesis in the liver. Conversely, animal proteins and fats, when they are eaten in the absolute absence of carbohydrates and fructose, they are actually elevated as the best possible items for gout patients. By making this major metabolic shift, the body stabilizes, insulin drops, the kidneys flush out that uric acid super efficiently, and the joint pain, it resolves.
Which leaves us with this final, just incredibly important question to ponder. Is your diet feeding your joints, or is it fighting them? Look, by understanding the real origins of uric acid and seeing how heavily it relies on our sugar and fructose intake, you now have a totally different lens through which to view your joint health. Whether you decide to explore the keto carnivore protocol, or you just, start reading the labels on your favorite sweet drinks a little more closely, the metabolic power is finally back in your hands. Thank you so much for hanging out and joining me on this deep dive today. Take this knowledge, apply it, and I'll see you on the next explainer.